Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Burke County Board of Commissioners pre-agenda meeting for Tuesday, June the 1st, 2021. Welcome. All commissioners are present with the exception of Commissioner Mulwee, County Manager, Finance Officer, Attorney, and Clerk. I'll ask you to silence your mobile devices at this time. If you have any that's going to make a noise, please take care of that. And remind you as you come to the podium to please be sure the microphone's on. If it's not, turn it on. A red light will come on the top of the microphone. Just be sure it's on whenever you get ready to speak so we can hear you and get good recording. At this time, gentlemen, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda. Thank you, Manager. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That's all of us, Madam Clerk. I have several presentations this afternoon. First one comes from County Manager, recognition of employee for completion of School of Government, Municipal, and County Administration course. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Lance has attended and completed this, and he will be here on the evening of our meeting to have a more formal presentation of the award.
All right, thank you, sir. We'll look forward to that. Item number 2, recognition of Rebecca McLeod, retiring local health director, presented by myself. And that item also will be more clearly identified on our regular meeting. And Rebecca's with us today. Again, Rebecca, good to see you. Thank you in advance, and we'll be thanking you more at that time. Also, item number 3, recognition of Governor's Volunteer Service Award. That'll also be presented by myself and or Alicia Wilson and or Paige Pitts. Anybody here to talk about that today, Madam Clerk?
Miss Wilson is here to speak to it.
All right. Good afternoon. Welcome.
As 6 Governor's Service Award winners and 1 medallion winner, and we're requesting to be able to have the commissioners assist us in presenting those awards on the meeting in June 15th.
Very good. We look forward to that, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Will we have a list of those at our meeting with all those? Yes. Thank you.
All right. This brings us to item 4, scheduled public hearings. We have a number of public hearings this month. First will come from Board of Commissioners, amending Chapter 6, Animal, Burke County Code of Ordinance and Public Hearing. Gentlemen, you will notice, take a look at this in your package. You'll recall that during our last meeting, we decided to make some changes in the Animal Advisory Board. And you'll notice that what we're doing is suggesting that we convert one of the previously 501c3 seats to a breeder seat, and also add the large animal seat. Any question about that?
Mr. Chairman, any input, anybody volunteer? Someone, do we know?
We have publicized that, I think, a little bit to this point. Madam Clerk, you want to address that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had interest from one person. I did contact all the breeders that spoke at the last meeting, but only one person is interested. I still do need clarification on what information will be required in addition to the standard county application for breeders. Once we have that, we can start advertising in advance for that seat. And did I understand you to say that we'd be adding seats 8 and 9, seat 8 an at-large breeder and seat 9 an at-large large animal owner?
I think my intent was to let the breeder seat take the place of one of the 501c3 seats. That was, I think, what I had suggested. And I think we had one of those seats that was rotating off at this time. Is that correct?
Well, I thought you had changed your mind about that. We do have some terms coming up in July. Maybe you and I can chat after class.
Okay, well, any other comments on that from the board? What's the board's feeling?
Mr. Chairman, is 9 too large? Madam Clerk, is 9 too large?
I wouldn't get too much bigger, but we have many boards that are bigger than 9 already. They seem to do okay.
I had one call, Madam Clerk, and asked me what you had to be qualified to be on there. And I said, I thought you just had to be either, at-large breeder or large animal owner or whatever. Is there any other qualifications to be accepted on that, or is there a qualification sheet that we can hand out to these folks?
In staff's opinion, we do need some additional information for those seats because we require it of the other seats. That has not been determined yet.
Okay, and I had some discussion about that. The 501c3 seat, we required them or asked them to provide some indication that they were in good standing as a 501c3. Of course, I think many of these breeders, many of them are personal breeders. They've done it for many years. Some appear to be members of groups, but that doesn't necessarily, give them certifications necessarily. I think my thought at this point is, we take applications, we look at what they say their qualifications are, and maybe make a determination, based on what they say and what we can discern from that. The only qualification that I think we've required from pet owners and others is just that they have a active rabies tag on with their pet. I think one of the things that I heard from our meeting, from public comment, was that we had too many seats represented by rescue groups on this board. Is the reason I had the opinion that maybe we should convert one of those seats and allow that to be the breeder seat. I think we probably need to make that clear today so we know how to go down the road if that's what this board is agreeable to.
Mr. Chairman, if we're converting one seat that exists already and then adding one seat, will that not give us 8?
It absolutely would give us 8. I think our Animal Services Director is a non-voting member. I wonder if that could be used as a tie-breaking seat, Mr. Counsel. Is that something that makes any sense at all, or how else would we deal with that?
Well, you can certainly have your head of the Animal Services there to break ties, but you'll have to provide for that actually in the ordinance that she would be able to break ties, or you can add her as a member and get back up to 9.
I think the Animal Services Director already has that authority in the ordinance, I believe.
So maybe 8's not a problem if she has that authority. If not, maybe we can give her that authority. What's the desire for? 8 seats with the director being does that work for everybody?
Usually you gotta have an odd numbers to break a tie. I don't know. Is that in the 502 regulations that you gotta have an odd number?
I'm not sure it's regulations, it's general practice that you have an odd number. I'm pulling up the code now to just confirm that Caitlin does have that authority. If you'll just give me a second.
excuse me, Jeff, I think you said 8 would be good if what? You said if somebody had a tie-breaking vote.
Right, and I think the Kay's checking out to see if the Animal Services Director is authorized to make a tie-breaking vote. That would solve that problem if she is. If not, we can make that change to the ordinance as well. We'll come back to that, and we'll go down that trail unless anybody objects. If that's not the case, we'll.
I'll bring up one more item on that before you move away from it.
Yes, sir.
I had an inquiry that I could not answer, and I was in the hayfield. I didn't have time to call JR. Someone asked the question, could you have some non-voting members on that board, like DSS and some of the other, not DSS, excuse me, mental health. You have members for information and expertise, but they're not voting, and maybe that's where we can get some large animal or other people with other expertise on the board. But personally, I like working with a 7 or 9 member board, but just for thought that you might want to consider that.
I have found that, and the director can vote in the event of a tie due to a recused or absent member on a voting matter.
So a recused or absent member may not solve the problem if everybody was there. So maybe we need to make some adjustment in the ordinance then, JR.
Yeah, I would think so, because if you've got all members present and you've got a 4-4 tie, then she would lack that authority if no one has been asked to be recused or is absent.
Okay, why don't you provide us that necessary language to go in the ordinance as part of this action?
Mr. Chairman, before we leave this, I did receive an email from you on the 25th indicating that you wanted the breeder seat and the large animal seat. So I just wanted to let you know that's why the draft ordinance was prepared the way it is. So
10-4. That was not my intent, though. My intent was to use one of those animal rescue seats.
okay, I'm sorry, I didn't interpret it that way.
No problem. Everybody good? Okay. All right, so we'll get that straightened out for our actual package going forward, okay? Other questions? Everybody good? All right. Item number 2, Community Development Zoning Text Amendment ZTA 2021-01 and public hearing. This will be presented by Shane Prisby, our Interim Planning Director. Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. The Community Development Department has been working to overhaul the county zoning ordinance. This will be the first major update since its adoption in November of 1996. The new zoning ordinance will also conform with the new statewide unified zoning laws, Chapter 160D of North Carolina General Statute. The department put together a very dedicated group of individuals, including Commissioner Carswell, who helped us through the process to provide insight from all different aspects of folks in Burke County to put together a document that better reflects current use trends, clarifies existing zoning regulations, and is a lot more user-friendly than our existing document. So I just want to recognize that Jennifer Forney, Peter Minter, and Bradley Kirkley have put in a tremendous amount of work on this document, getting to where we are and improving it, and they're here to help us answer questions that you may have on the document as well. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Shane. Gentlemen, any questions on this matter? Commissioner Carswell has served on this group as well. Any thoughts you want to share with us, Johnny?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Probably of all the committees I've ever worked on, Bradley, Jennifer, Pete and Shane, this was the most intense committee for a long number of months to put together. And the team that was together, and I call it a team because it really was, it was a diversification of folks around the county that wasn't afraid to say, let's do this again. And we would do it again. So the end product here is, I've never seen anything like going through the ordinances, which were, Shane, I can't remember the number of how many ordinances it was, but they all pulled together. There were some long nights and long afternoons and long days, and Jennifer, you and Bradley and Pete, I just can't commend you enough for Bradley taking the brunt of it, a lot of times being the facilitator of the meeting, and there was a lot of good work. So this is a fine piece of work. It's a great document, probably one of the better pieces we've ever put out.
All right, thank you, Johnny. Any questions for these folks?
Mr. Chairman, I have several. Shane, this was a lot of reading. I could have read the New Testament time I read both of those. What a bunch of reading. Anyhow, I do have several questions. Well, first one says that this has been in practice since June of last year or whatever, and it had to be approved by us, and I wondered why we put something in practice that had not yet been agreed on. And in a couple of the zones, and I'm going to throw a couple questions at you at once. The zoning covers a lot of property and property owners that has 3-acre density to it, and you got lots on there less than a half acre. I think I saw one at .33, which is a third of an acre. And, you know, how does that apply to me if I own property in these areas with 2.5 acres and I got to have 3 to build a house? What's that do to me? And what changes my action or how I apply for it? And then the one big question to me, and Wayne and I were on the board when we did the I-40 corridor, and we thought we'd climb Mount Everest when we got through with that. And I agree with Johnny, this looks like more work than what was done back then, but it goes from any kind of zoning to none. So why would you have all that, I forgot how many thousands of acres it is, with no zoning on it? And I guess the question is, what makes a difference? If it has none on it, it appears to me that is a wrong decision. We need some type of zoning for you to start with. If you can, you know, if you're on I-40 and you got a 5-acre lot and you want to develop it, all of a sudden you don't have a zoning. You don't know what you can put on it and what you can't. So that's my concerns with that.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor, and I've been taking notes. So if I may go in reverse order as they were asked, the I-40 corridor and the work that the commissioners put into that, it really is great. And what we realized is that those areas were the only ones with those standards and regulations, that we didn't have the non-residential development standards outside of the overlay districts. So what the department is proposing is to take the standards from the I-40 overlay district and have that apply countywide so that it's consistent for developers, for commercial and industrial zoning. It's consistent. It's easier for them to understand and plan for anywhere in the county. It's a level of quality with that, so hopefully it makes it easier for folks to locate their businesses within the county. And the second part of your question on that is that it's an overlay zoning district, so the parcels will retain their underlying zoning districts underneath that. So it really, there isn't a big change for anybody in residential zoning. They shouldn't notice really, other than calling us, asking the questions. I got this letter, that would be about it. And then for anybody coming to develop commercial or industrial property, they would all follow under the same rules of the I-40 overlay but it would be county-wide, so everybody would be playing by the same rules, fair and consistent. Did that sufficiently answer that portion of your question?
But you're changing, are we changing this? I guess the question, why did we decide to do away with the zoning for that area? And I'm remembering way back when this was done and all the reasons that we felt like that had to be done or needed to be done. And it has, as far as I know, has operated without practically a hiccup. I mean, people have been, have developed that I-40 corridor, some areas of it, and not had any big concerns of it. And does it make it harder for me as a property owner to build or do something on that I-40 corridor, or does it make it easier?
If I may, could I try to answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the I-40 overlay is going away in name only. If you are a residential property owner, if you're zoned residential 1, residential 2, residential 3, nothing will change for you. You still have your minimum lot sizes. Those aren't changing. You can still build on your property. You're good. What is changing is going to be for those people that want to do commercial or industrial types of work. And what has happened is the only place that we had any regulations for industrial or commercial was in the I-40 overlay. The rest of the county had none. So we want to take those industrial and commercial aspects that we have in the I-40 and apply those for the county so that the county-wide we will have industrial and commercial regulations. But if you're residential, nothing's changing for you. You're still R1, R2, whatever your underlying zoning district is, you stay the same.
This is probably not a fair question. Are the fees going up because we changing the zone?
No.
So this is to satisfy the state mandate, if that's a good word, for 160D. Has all this happened because of that mandate?
No, not for the I-40. The I-40 change was basically just to get rules for industrial and commercial development countywide. And if you take those rules from I-40, then there's no reason to still have I-40. You wouldn't call the whole county the whole county wouldn't be an I-40 overlay. So we take away that overlay, but the rules still stay the same and they apply countywide.
Yeah, so if I'm outside the 2.5, I believe that's what it was, wasn't it? 2.5 miles of the I-40 corridor, then I can appeal and develop that property as a business, as whatever, if that's what it's going to be.
That is correct.
In that sense, it would make sense.
And some of the things we've done with that as well is input from BDI and Commissioner Carswell and other folks in that to make the standards for commercial and industrial buildings better fit what industries need right now. So changing, say, height requirements and things so that what our ordinance is making it easier for businesses to come in and relocate to Burke County or start up a new business in that and apply with the same standards, whether you're within 2.5 miles of I-40 or anywhere else in the county. It's a uniform standard, and that's what we are recommending to move forward to.
Okay. All right.
The second question that you had was in reference to the conservation district and the 3-acre zoning. Is that and if for the rezonings for the conservation districts, what we're proposing is taking all of the various parallel zoning districts that are no longer allowed under 160D and combining them into a single conservation district. And the goal for those areas are to have 3-acre lots. This ends up being less restrictive overall because some of the ones that we're proposing combining into the new district used to be set at 5 or 3.5 acres. So if you had a 6-acre lot, now you could subdivide it into 2 3-acre lots and therefore have 2 houses on that property, on the 2 properties instead of, say, being in a district that required 5 acres. And then you would be stuck with just 1 and wouldn't be able to subdivide it. So what we've done is take those areas that were already in some level of conservation district, which the intent is to have a lower density in those areas, hence the floor of 3 acres for development, but we're trying to simplify that for everybody, make it easier, and come into compliance with the new state laws.
Okay. I'll give you kind of a live example, if you will. Say this couple passed away and they owned 100 acres. I'm going to use round numbers, okay? Had 100 acres of land. They had 20 children. And out of that 20 acres, each child got an acre. And then the other 80 acres was to remain in a farm. Now, those people that received inheritance of 1 acre can build on that 1 acre. In other words, it does not have to be, I'm not trying to be hung up on you got to have 3 acres or more to build a house, you know, because I see some serious unhappy people if we're trying to pass an ordinance that requires you to have 3 acres to build a house on. And that's what 3 or 4, I didn't make the number, all the ZMAs, I think 4, 5, and 6 alluded to 3 acres.
And Commissioner Taylor, we're taking some of those where you had to have 5. So in your example, I feel like the family would be happier now that they can go from being required 5 acres in certain districts down to 3. So we are moving towards making that easier for folks and therefore less restrictive while still maintaining the characteristic for the area as outlined by the strategic plan and the map as well. So we are moving it towards a uniform and still a lower standard while keeping that same aesthetic in the conservation district. And for subdivision of land, it becomes a little bit easier if you're in a conservation district estate lot. That drops it down from 5 to 3. 3 is kind of the minimum for that group of conservation districts to keep a lower lot density in that area, to provide the aesthetic of more wilderness, smaller home sites spread out more, to keep that rural characteristic that was one of the big comments that we received from the team, the committee that worked on this, is that people like being in Burke County because it's a rural place. It feels, it's a home place for them, and it's not, people don't want to live in Charlotte, they don't want to live in Asheville, they want to live in Burke County because they like the way that it is. So our goal for this area was to try to keep that as consistent as we could and make it easier for folks at the same time.
Okay, so this is not going to restrict any of those offsprings from building a house on an acre lot. Is that what you're saying?
It would depend on the zoning district that parcel would be in the situation that you're presenting. But in this situation, for those folks, particularly in the conservation district, estate districts, it will make them easier. So if you had a 6-acre parcel, you would not currently be able to subdivide that into 2 parcels at 3 acres because you would be required to have a 5-acre parcel and you couldn't subdivide out that 1 acre. Now in this situation, you can take that 6-acre parcel and make it 2 3-acre parcels and still be in conformity with the conservation district. So for many folks in this area, it makes it easier for them should they choose to subdivide, well, again, keeping the characteristic, particularly out in the western part of the county around the lake, keeping that rural aesthetic that was one of the big things that people really love about the county and part of the reason why they choose to come here and live here.
Okay.
And the remaining question I had from your first question was the implementation of 160D in June prior to the adoption of the updated ordinance. And please clarify if I misrepresent this or miss something on this, but with the new state laws, part of what their requirement was for us to start enacting certain procedures ahead of the adoption date, which they then pushed back to July 1 of 2021 to allow municipalities and local governments to update their ordinance to reflect the state laws. So we were required to follow through with certain procedures, things that we were no longer allowed to be able to do while we take the time to update our ordinances to come into compliance.
I could make that question a lot easier for you. My concern is simply this: are we in compliance of this law, or did we have this timetable for y'all to prepare this, and we're in compliance? We're not breaking any laws as the Board of Commissioners.
Jennifer, do you want to elaborate on that, please?
Currently, we are in compliance, even though we have not adopted 160D. When 160D was adopted back in June, you were expected at that time to recognize what those rules were and abide by them. But the state gave us until July the 1st of this year to actually get your ordinances updated and get your ordinances adopted. So right now, we are practicing 160D as it is written and has been adopted, yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Shane.
Commissioner?
Other questions for Shane? All right, hearing none, this item will remain on our agenda. Item number 2, Community Development Zoning Text CTA 2021-01, again presented by Shane Frisbee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. The ZMA in question is rezoning all the parcels in the county that are zoned as CDE or Conservation State Lot District and turning them into the new Unified Conservation District. This rezoning would be contingent upon the adoption of the new county zoning ordinance. Are there any questions that y'all have about this that we may answer for you?
Questions for Shane on this item? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, number 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This ZMA, in reference, is proposing to rezone the Conservation District estate lot conditional districts to the newly proposed Conservation District. This rezoning, again, is contingent upon adoption of the new county zoning ordinance.
Questions on this item? Madam Clerk and Counsel, I suppose it's not possible to combine these into one public hearing and comment. Is that possible? Or not a good idea, or talk to me?
Well, I think the way that Mr. Frisbee has it laid out would probably be the simplest, because it is addressing each issue that results on the map from the changes in the text. So I think that the way he has it set out would simplify things, and if people have questions about one aspect or another, they all wouldn't be piled into one single public hearing.
Do we,
Probably do that, Mr. Chairman, but since it's a public hearing.
do we anticipate, I guess in your meetings, do you have one group versus another that we're going to hear from, or what are you anticipating?
From, in regards to the rezonings, and please let me know if you're feeling differently about this, but the majority of the questions that we received about it were in regards to the notifications that we sent out and were posted in the newspaper. Most people, from what I understand, did not have an issue with the rezonings because as we discussed, they tend to be less restrictive for the people in those zonings. And then for the I-40 corridor, it's essentially a non-change for all the residential parcels, and it doesn't make too much change for the non-residential parcels who are already in that layer. So that wasn't really the majority of the questions that we received were in regarding to the proposed new zoning ordinance and primarily about short-term rentals.
And the ordinances did go to the planning committee, and did anybody show up at that meeting?
Yes, there were about 6 folks who spoke at that meeting. It was entirely geared around short-term rentals. I would say there were 2 people who were not in favor of any sort of regulation or minimum standards for, and there were 4 folks who were in favor of minimum standards. And that's been about the split that we've received on public comments for that. But the majority of the public comments that we've received about the zoning ordinance updates have entirely been short-term rentals, with the majority being positive towards setting a minimum set of standards.
All right. Any further questions on this item? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next one. I believe we're on number 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, this rezoning is proposing to rezone all of the lots in the conservation low density conditional district to the newly proposed conservation district. Again, this is contingent upon adoption of the rezoning. And one thing that we have not discussed, but I would like to say as well, and Mr. Taylor made this point earlier, is that for these parcels, but not the I-40 overlay, but for these particularly, if they're not all adopted, the parcels would become unzoned in that case, and our intent is to avoid that. But that is not going to be the case with the I-40 overlay because that sits on top of their underlying zoning districts as such.
Questions on this item? All right, number 5, zoning amendment 2021-06.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the final one. And this one is for the I-40 overlay and proposing to rezone all the parcels in I-40 overlay and to not having an overlay district. This again would be contingent upon adoption of the new zoning ordinance.
Questions on this item?
Already asked. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all very much.
All right, thank you, Shane. Madam Clerk, did that get us all the way through 08, 2021-08, number 7?
Didn't y'all just do number 6? There's 7 and 8.
That was prior to the low density conditional conservation.
Which one was that? Was that -06?
I thought we just did number 6.
I thought I had everything in order, so I apologize.
I probably threw you off with my,
Density conservation, and 7 was low density
Conditional.
conservation, and 8
That's I-40. So we missed the conservation district,
low density
Low density.
conservation.
just CDL or CDLCD.
CDL.
Okay.
Probably threw you off with my fantasy that we could do all this in one fatal swoop.
Make it easier.
I'm sorry.
It's quite all right. I thought that through very hard first, and wished it would be that way, but it is a bit of a marathon, so thank you all for your patience with us, and particularly me in this moment. So conservation district low density, that would be 06 is CDL.
The agenda items and those ZMA numbers kind of throw you off.
CMA 2021-06 is a recommendation to rezone the parcels in the county in the Conservation Low Density District, CDL, to the newly proposed Conservation District, contingent upon adoption of the new county zoning ordinance.
So officially, is there any question on that subject? All right, hearing none, thank you, Shane, for that. We will can keep all these items right on the page, right where they are. Madam Clerk, it might be helpful to move the animal ordinance down the list so that all these could have the same number as the item number. But I'll do better in the future. Okay, I'll attempt to do better in the future. Item number 8, County Manager, adoption of the fiscal year 21-22 budget. This item, of course, we've had meetings upon. Mr. Manager, anything you want to say about this?
No, sir, we've had our workshops and gotten through the tweaking that the board seemed to be interested in doing. We will put that into the normal format and budget amendment, ordinance, and have that ready for you at your regular meeting.
All right, any questions for the manager? All right, hearing none, this item will remain on the agenda. This brings us to our consent agenda. First item on consent is Western Piedmont COG Area Agency on Aging, Home and Community Care Block Grant fiscal year 21-22. This will be presented by Tina Miller. Afternoon, Tina.
Hey there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members of the board. Coming before you again this year. Every year, Burke County receives funds through the Home and Community Care Block Grant to provide services for older adults in Burke County. The Burke Council on Aging, working with the Western Piedmont Council Governments, makes recommendations to the commissioner as far as the use of these funds. You have the recommendations from the Council on Aging, which serves as the advisory committee, and there are no changes in provider designation services to be funded. The only change is we've had a reduction of funds of $1,700. The federal state amount of funds this year is $603,499, and the Council on Aging chose to take that reduction in funds from the nutrition program, knowing that they are getting a sizable amount of funds from American Rescue Plan, whatever that initials are this year. And so they are getting additional funds, so we don't feel that there'll be any reduction in service to any clients from the reduction.
All right, thank you, Tina. Any questions for Tina on this matter? Hearing none, it'll remain on our consent agenda. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Item number 2, clerk reappointments, removals to the Adult Care and Nursing Home Committee, presented by Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to update the Adult Care and Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee. Seats 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 12 on this board need some action. Seat number 2 is occupied by Roger Hart, and he is seeking reappointment. Seat number 3 is occupied by Ron Cooper. He is not seeking reappointment, so we'll be requesting his removal. Seat number 5 is occupied by Kathy Foster. Ms. Foster is not seeking reappointment. Seat number 6 is occupied by John Cook. We are trying to determine if Mr. Cook is seeking or is not seeking reappointment. The Ombudsman has written Mr. Cook as well as Mr. Austin in seat 12 and asked to let her know by June 9th what their intent is. And then I will update the item accordingly. Seat number 7 is occupied by Dolores Huffman. Ms. Huffman is seeking reappointment. Seat number 8 is occupied by Ann Holland. Ms. Holland is seeking reappointment. And seat number 12 occupied by Alan Austin. And we're trying to determine if Mr. Austin is or is not seeking reappointment. Initial contacts have are not responsive. For those that are being reappointed, it's the remainder of a 3-year term ending in 2023 for Mr. Hart and for Ms. Huffman. Mrs. Holland's 3-year term would end May 31st, 2024. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any questions on this item?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Madam Clerk, drop the E off of John Cook's name. It's just COOK. He will be seeking reappointment. For whatever reason, he told me he has not received anything from the ombudsman, no email and or mail, but he wants to seek reappointment. So
Excellent. I'll make that change. And
you notify the ombudsman maybe? Or
well, I will let her know, but she probably needs, if he gets the letter she said she sent, to respond to it, but I will certainly pass that along to her.
Thank you, ma'am.
The question, comment? Hearing none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 3 comes from the clerk as well, reappointment and removal of Recreation Commission members. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Seat number 7 on the Recreation Commission represents W.A. Young, and it's occupied by EMS Director Jason Black. His term ended in March, and he is willing to serve another 3-year term. Seat number 13, representing Mountain View, is occupied by Jessica Wisnett. However, Ms. Wisnett recently moved and resigned her seat, which has an unexpired term ending March 31st, 2023. So we'll be requesting her removal. Just for informational purposes, seats 1, 2, 5, 6, 8, 9, and 11 are currently vacant.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And gentlemen, let me ask you to take a look at that list. I'll just briefly mention these vacant seats. Well, I won't, since I touched the wrong place on this screen. Bear with me just a moment. Madam Clerk, tell us what communities are vacant, please.
Sure. Seat number 1 represents Forest Hill. Seat number 2, Glen Alpin. Seat 5 is George Hildebrand. Seat 6 is the Hildebrand-Eichard area. Seat 8 is Ray Childers. Seat 9 is Mole. Seat 11 is Salem.
And let me just encourage you, if you know folks in those communities, we really need some folks to represent those communities on our Recreation Commission.
Mr. Chairman, do you think that's because of the COVID, or because that's always been a popular board? You never had trouble filling those seats years ago. And I just wonder if something, maybe the COVID or something has caused that, the vacancies there.
I suppose that's possible, but
I mean, that is a very popular board.
if there's any ideas as to how we can advertise these seats in those communities, or maybe with their athletic foundations or something, be good to have folks there. Any question on this item?
Mr. Chairman, a comment in relation to what Wayne said. The COVID did stop most of your sports activities and gatherings, and I would say that it is a big reason of why these vacancies are there. But I did have a note here of my own that, you know, with that many vacancies, they never could have a quorum, could they? So you can't have a meeting without well, you could have a meeting, but you couldn't do any business without a quorum. It's almost, Mr. Chairman, like starting all over again. for
Yeah.
that kind of event.
All right. Questions, comments? Hearing none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 4, clerk reappointments and appointments to Child Protection, Child Fatality Team. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The terms of appointment for Beth Calley, seat number 6 at large, David Rust, seat 7 at large, and Brandon Collins, seat 8 at large, on the Child Protection, Child Fatality Prevention Team ended April 30th, 2021. Only Ms. Calley is seeking reappointment. An application was received from EMS Major Nicole Hudson for vacant seat number 2, which represents EMS. That was formerly held by Greg Curry. The unexpired term ends April 30th, 2023. April Pope occupied seat number 5, also an at-large seat. She resigned due to an employment change. This seat has an unexpired term ending April 30th, 2022. So we'll be requesting some removals, the reappointment of Ms. Calley, but I don't have anybody to fill, I believe, Ms. Pope's seat or possibly Mr. Collins' seat, but we'll work on it.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Any question on this item? Seeing here none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 5, again from the clerk, appointment of Western Piedmont Community College Board of Trustees. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to reappoint Lamar Smitherman to the Western Piedmont Community College Board of Trustees, seat number 1 for a 4-year term ending June 30th, 2025. Mr. Smitherman is the only application we have on file at this time. Should that change, I will move that item to your decision agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any question on this item? Hearing none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Next item comes from County Manager, appointment of County Manager as Interim Health Director. Mr. Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We may want to have the culprit that's responsible for this vacancy come up and explain why this is necessary, but I have filled in the gap between the departure of one health director and the arrival of the new health director in both Stanley and Stokes County, so it's not new to me. We're looking at about an 11-day gap if all goes well.
All right, any questions on this matter? Hearing none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Thank you, Brian. Item number 7, Community Development Resolution recognizing compliance with Ncgs Chapter 160D. Change.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The following resolution acknowledges conformity with NCGS Chapter 160D, the state's new unified zoning laws. The resolution is written assuming the adoption of the new zoning ordinance. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Shane on this item?
I think I asked him enough already.
Hearing and seeing none, Shane, this item will remain on the consent agenda.
Thank you all very much.
Item number 8, Finance, fiscal year 21-22, general liability workers' comp insurance renewal. This will be presented by Ms. Pierce. Margaret?
Good afternoon. Insurance for property, general liability, and workers' comp is provided through the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners risk pools. All vehicle, equipment, and crime insurance is proposed with a $1,000 deductible, with all other coverage proposed with a $5,000 deductible. No excess liability coverage is recommended. Workers' compensation insurance is proposed to continue with the $350,000 deductible. Renewal cost for general liability and property is $505,501, less than credits for multiple policies and various deductibles. We won't have that exact credit until after we're billed. The workers' compensation renewal cost is $258,329, plus we pay claims. These amounts are an overall increase of $49,410, or 9% over prior year. These funds are included in the coming budget.
Thank you, Margaret. Any question on this item?
Mr. Chairman, I've read in some material that the increases were going to be higher this year, but a subnote to that article said to be careful that many companies would season the opportunity, to use old country slang terms, stick it to you. And 9% seems to be high, Margaret. You feel like we're being abused, and have we compared other companies?
No, sir, it ties directly to increased replacement costs that are tied to building cost. And for the amount of buildings we have, approximately $131 million worth, that seems consistent to have a $49,000 increase. We increased our property values because of content changes, increase on replacement costs for all those contents, and the actual building replacement costs. That's a significant portion of the increase dollar amount on those.
In these kind of situations, do we do big time negotiations or just accept what's given?
The risk pool does not have a process for negotiations because it is our association. We don't have that opportunity. The workers' comp was level, which we were pleased with it. It didn't go up a penny. So we kind of take the good with the bad, I suppose, as it goes forward. But they've always been very good to work with us and take care of all of our needs as they're a specialist in government insurance.
If all the counties got together and said that's too large of an increase, it wouldn't make a difference?
I'm sure we could certainly look to that avenue, and I'm happy to go back to the Association of County Commissioners and request if there's anything they can do to decrease our policy.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman, why don't you sit on that board, don't you?
Which one?
The risk pool?
Risk pool.
Risk management, yeah.
Did anything unusual happen that you can remember in your meetings that would create? I don't think 9% is, I mean, you know, you don't want to pay 9%,
Right.
but the cost of everything's going up, correct?
Yeah, just pick up the paper today. I mean, it's crazy.
I don't know if any of you guys have received any updates from your homeowner's insurance, but I just received one, and 9%, maybe 1% or 2 less than what was included on what I received.
It's just crazy.
Was there, Wayne, a lot of people use the workers' comp insurance this year through NCACC? Or they give you no report on that?
I haven't heard anything on that, Johnny.
Other questions, comments? All right, this item will remain on consent agenda. Item number 9, JCPC removals, reappointments, and appointments to the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. Madam Clerk. Or AJ. There she is. Come.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
So I'm happy to report from your Juvenile Crime Prevention Council on first renewal requests for the 2-year terms, which will now end in 2023. And those are Mike Swan in seat number 1, Captain Keith Bowman in seat number 2, Sheriff Wisnett in seat 3, Ron Abernathy in seat 5, Jennifer Forney in seat 8, Jasper Hemphill in seat 10, Willow Conrad in seat 12, Dr. Moody in seat 20, Nikki Carpenter in seat 22, and Dorian Palmer in seat 23. In addition, there are 2 members rotating off or retiring. That's Doug Harchis in seat 16, and with great sadness, Rebecca McLeod in seat 17. The council respectfully requests your approval of these actions.
AJ, those are good members. You think we could draft them back? Let's just put them, let's just draft them.
I will do anything you come up with to make that change.
All right, Madam Clerk, we didn't have seat number 1 listed as Is that something?
Seat number 1 is occupied by Mike Swan. His term expires June 30th, 2022. Now, if he wants someone to replace him, we don't have an application from his successor at this time. I don't have any action anticipated for Mr. Swan's seat.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, comment on that?
Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Item number 10 comes from Tax Department. Tax collection report for May 2021. Afternoon, Danny.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Tax collections report is for July 1 of 2020 through May 31 of 2021. If you look at property tax, we're 101.30% collected. Motor vehicle, 109.78%. Current year taxes to get, that's the two together, is 102.10%. Delinquent taxes, 112%. Late list penalty, 156%. And if we look at the tax levy, we have collected 98.37%.
All right. Thank you, Danny. Gentlemen, any questions on the tax collection report? All right. Hearing none, this item will remain on the consent agenda. Item 11, release refund report. Danny.
Yes, this is a release refund report for May of 2021. The report shows $1,851.56 in releases. There was no rebills in this, so the net amount was the $1,851.56. No refunds, and the vehicle tax, there was refunds of $102.47.
All right. Thank you, Danny. Any questions on this item? All right. Hearing none, this item will remain on the consent agenda.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. This brings us to item 6, items for decision. This comes from our Health Department, 2020 State of the County Health Report and COVID-19 Review. This will be presented by Lisa Moore. Okay. Afternoon, Lisa.
Good afternoon, Chairman and board members. So we're just a placeholder. We're going to present our reports on the 15th. I will be doing the State of the County Health Report for 2020, and Rebecca will be doing the COVID-19 review. But if anybody has any questions, I'll entertain any.
Any questions for Lisa or Rebecca? All right. Hearing none, we'll look forward to those reports. Thank you, Lisa. All right, this brings us to item number 7, reports and reminders. Would remind you to spay and neuter your pets. Please don't litter. Pick up trash. Johnny, or anybody familiar with Mr. Manager? Maybe you can help us with this or help me with this. Is there any state funds or anything available that we could tag for litter signs perhaps throughout the county, any kind of road signage or anything that we could look for help on, just putting something out in front of people about litter? Any thoughts? Anybody got any thoughts on that subject? No?
Because I have, I'm sorry, is the resolution that we sent in to our representatives, we've not heard. I owed back from them as far as maybe some strengthening of the littering laws in Burke County as well as the other 99 counties. I think everybody's knows how I feel about it. A good $1,000 ticket probably would stop some littering if they would write those. So, you know, we still have our problems going over to the Johns River site. Got a call the other day. There was a couch laying in the middle of the road over there, and a mattress on up the street. So I prompted Brian. We've called law enforcement. We've called Highway Patrol to try to encourage them to make more frequent trips, especially on that particular road, to try to get those folks that are not securing their loads, obviously, and write citations for that. Setting down to the entrance of Johns River is not getting it. We're just going to have to go back up towards Wayne's house and start down through there and hide off in the woods or whatever we have to do till we can catch some of these folks and I hate to do, no, I don't, I do. They need to be cited. I mean, everybody knows they need to secure their loads. And for those people that are continuing to drop their trash off in my front yard, that's okay, I'll continue to pick it up.
Johnny, it's just the trucks, the trash trucks alone. I see it all the time. I travel that road constantly, and it's just the trash, even the municipalities' trash trucks. I mean, this will blow, the paper will blow out or something, but those trucks, I don't know how many trips they make down that road a day, hundreds probably, to empty their loads. And it just happens. I don't know if they can really completely secure the trash on those trucks, you know.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of comments. I think the only thing that's gonna stop littering is when those people do it, they spend the 30 days cleaning up and picking up trash, but where I live, it's just flooded with fast food restaurant items. And I wanted to comment, coming to this meeting, I got behind a truck with a mattress on it, bed, and he did not have it secured. I've got in the other lane and passed him. I didn't want to blow it on my car. But, you know, it does take a second or two to tie things down and secure it, but people need to do that. It does, you know, it saves so much.
All right, thank you. Anything else to discuss today?
Sure. Anybody got a license to rake?
To rake? Mine's expired. My hay raking license expired about 20 years ago. Okay. All right. Hearing nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, thank you, man. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That's everybody, Madam Clerk. Thank you.